QuickBooks Online 2021. Generate reports after 1 month of data input. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online 2021. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars practice file. We're going to be generating reports after the first month of data input that we might then think about giving to, say, a supervisor or a client. We'll be able to review our numbers as well as think about how we're going to organize these reports often on a monthly basis so that we can distribute them as nicely and cleanly as possible. Also note that we would generally do a bank reconciliation before we finalize the reports and finalize the period. However, we want to do that later on in this course so we can put the first and second bank recs together and so that we can see the problems and benefits of doing one versus the other. The first month usually being a little bit more difficult than the second month. So we will see the bank reconciliation process at a later point, as well as an adjusting entry type process at a later point. So let's go ahead and right click on the tab up top. We're going to duplicate this tab. I'm going to duplicate it again, right click on this tab up top and duplicate it again. Our starting two reports will typically be a balance sheet and an income statement. So we'll start off there. Going to go down to the reports on the left-hand side and we'll be opening up the balance sheet first. So opening up the good old balance sheet. So here we have that. We'll range change it up top, scrolling up top. We're going to put the end date as of the end of the month this time, 01/31/21. So it's the first month of operations. I'm going to run that report. I'm going to close up the hamburger, hold down control and scroll up a little bit. This is where we stand at this point. So if you're checking your numbers, you can kind of verify your numbers to our numbers here. If you manually entered, say, the payroll, for example, and you didn't have the payroll items, then you may not have as much breakout down here in the liabilities. It might just all be under just payroll liabilities, for the total of the payroll, which would be the total payroll liabilities here, where you can minimize this item. So there we have that. Now you might then have internal reports and external reports that you would want to provide. So maybe then you would customize your report here for external purposes, save it as a custom form that you're going to be giving externally. And so let's think about that process first. Let's go up top and do some of our standard customization. So we'll go to the customized reports. We're going to say, let's make the negative numbers bracketed and we'll make them red. And then we're going to have remove the pennies. Let's remove the pennies. And then if I scroll down, I'm going to go to the headers and footers and let's remove the date, time, and report basis. Date, time, and report basis. Let's go ahead and run that report. Now, I also might want to get rid of any zero numbers here if an account happens to be zero. So one way we might do that is to go up top and say that we want this drop down and we want to say that I want just the non-zero numbers. And we'll run that report. And this would be good for external reporting purposes. So now that accounts payable is gone, but it's not as good for internal because we would like to drill down on that zero item if there was activity in it when we're kind of analyzing and auditing our financial statements. So we're going to imagine this is something that we're going to be giving to external users. So let's go up top and memorize this. So I'm going to save this report. I'm going to call it balance sheet, let's say month end. And I'm going to try to add a new group down here. I'm going to add a group and I'm going to call it month end reports. So these are going to be reports that I'm imagining we give externally and we'll save it there. So they're in month end reports now. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. So there we have that. Now, if I was to double check it now, let's go to the tab all the way to the left. I'm going to see if I can refresh the entire thing to see if we can refresh it here to make sure the reports will then appear. Go down to the reports on the left-hand side. So we're going to go down to the reports and we're looking at the custom reports. And there we have our custom report. So it did show up. That looks good. Back to the balance sheet. Let's save this in a couple different ways. We're gonna save it as a PDF file and then we're going to export it to Excel and we're going to think about how we can kind of combine all these reports together in a Excel document. Also note, and we might look at this later, I'm going to go back to the first tab, that you could also use the management reports over here that could give it a more professional look and feel. We might do a presentation basically on that in and of itself at a later point. So I'm going to go back on over it. Let's see where we're going to put this in terms of our folder now. I'm going to go to the desktop here. I'm going to open up where I want to put it. And so I'm going to put it in trial balance. This is going to be part 2. So we had QuickBooks And then I want part 2. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to put a new folder here, and I'm just going to call it January, month 1 or January reports that we're going to put in here. And that's where it's going to go. And so now let's go ahead and export these items. So I think I opened up QuickBooks Desktop on accident, but here we go. So now I'm going to go to the drop down. We'll say, let's make a PDF for it and save the PDF. That's going to put it down here. I'm going to drag the folder over a little bit so we can do the old drag and drop. Dragging and dropping are such a fun phrase to say. And we're going to pull that over, drag and drop. So there we have it. I'm going to view the folders as a large item. So there's our balance sheet. And now I'm also going to export it to Excel. So we'll export it to Excel as well. And hit the old drop down and say export to Excel. That will open up down below too. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to pull that over into our folder before I open it. So I'm going to drag that on open. So there it is. I'm going to rename it not as the balance sheet, but as our financial reports. So financial reports for January, Jan. And this is where we're going to put all of our other reports. I'm going to try to put them on the same tab. Let's open this up. And there we have it. Now let's open up another one. I'm going to minimize this tab. I'm going to maximize our window over here. Let's open up another one. Go into the first tab. Go to the reports down below. And let's open up then on the standard report, the profit and loss report now. So we'll open up the P&L, the profit and loss. Range change it up top, ending at 013121. Running that report. Closing the old hamburger, and then we'll do the same kind of customization. We're going to close this thing on the bottom. Same customization, customizing up top. We're going to say we want negative numbers to be bracketed, red. Remove the pennies, please, por favor. And then we're going to go down to the header footer, and we're going to remove the date prepared, time prepared, report basis, and run it. Run it. I was running. And then there we have it. So now let's go ahead and hit the drop down here, and we're going to remove the 0 numbers. So we just want the non-zeros, non-zero numbers. There we go. So there we have this one. Let's memorize this report. So I'm going to customize it and save it as kind of our standard month-end report. We'll put it in the month-end report as well, profit and loss. I'm just going to call it month-end profit and loss, and then we'll save that one. And let's do our standard exporting process once again. So I'm going to say, let's export it. Now notice how exporting is easier now really than sending it as right as an email. If you have a lot of reports, you probably want to save them first before you send them out directly out of QuickBooks. Although if you're comfortable and confident, maybe you can send them right out of QuickBooks, but I would save them first and then organize them and then think about how I want to put the attachment together, because once again, the presentation matters most of the time. You know, they might not even read the thing, but if they look at it and they're like, wow, that's impressive, then sometimes that's what you're looking for, right? So now we're going to export the Excel as well. We're going to open that up, and we're going to put that in. We want to put that into a new tab in our existing Excel sheet. So here's our financial statements. I'm going to open up a new tab here. I want to put the other Excel sheet right on top of it. So we're going to open this one up so we can do so. We'll enable the editing. And then I'm going to copy the whole sheet. So I'm going to put my cursor on the triangle, copy the whole sheet, Control C, minimize this thing, put my cursor on A1 and Control V. I'm going to rename the tab by double clicking on the tab down below, profit and loss, P&L. We'll just call it the good old P&L report. And let's save this. So we've got those two there now. And then I want to look now at the transaction detail report, which is not always one that you would provide to somebody else, but great one for kind of thinking about possibly your billing process, and for checking our work in a practice problem like this, it's also very good. So we'll go to the tab at the end, right click, and I'm going to duplicate this tab again. And then we're going to go down to the reports on the left-hand side, into the reports, and then we're going to go all the way down to the accounting section down below. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm in the standard tab, by the way, down to the accounting section down below. So we have the employees. Here's for my accountant, and we want the transaction detail by date. Transaction detail by date. So let's select that item, and then range change it up top. Range change 013121 being the ending date. and we'll run that one, running it. And I'm going to hold the control down, scroll down just a bit so that we can see this full report a little bit more easily. Now, what you want to do if you're checking your numbers and something is wrong, if you have something off, what you do is check your balance sheet report here and see what is off on the balance sheet, tick and tie everything out and say, okay, what is the difference here? And then check your income statement, tick and tie it out, see what the difference is. Any difference that you have, you can drill down on the date and then on the amount and look at the transaction detail by date. And then the next thing you want to do is go to this report and check each line item here, because this is actually each line item that we entered after the first point after our starting balances. So if you were correct after the first section of the course, meaning our beginning balances started at the same point, and you entered all this information exactly the way we did, then it has to end at the same point. It has to work. So you can actually go in here and basically tick and tie off these numbers to see if you have a difference, and then go find the difference, drill down on the difference. Doing things like that is tedious, but it can actually, help out a lot in figuring things out. And the number one issue when you do this, if you have a problem, especially in a practice problem or any time when you're not working in real time. For example, in practice, you may not be working in real time when someone says, hey, I would like you to do a whole year's worth of my data input from the bank statements, possibly using bank feeds, because I need to do my taxes like now, and it's the end of the year. So then we're going to be working in the past, right? And when that happens, you're going to have date issues. You might enter the thing in the wrong date, right? That's the common problem that would happen. Whereas if you work in real time, you would always be entering things in today's date, so you don't really have that problem. So note that if you have an issue with a date problem, or if there's a problem at all, you're going to first assume and check whether it is a date problem by then changing the date range up top. Make the date range as of like 12/31/21 and see if you have any differences in your numbers. You could do this on the balance sheet and the income statement as well. And then if you do have a difference, drill down on that difference. And here you could see the difference, right? If you see anything here that's not in January, it's in some date after January, then if you're entering it with us in January, then you entered it in a different month. And that's the problem. How do you fix it? Well, you just drill down on it. Like QuickBooks lets you fix it, right? You could just change the form, change the date on it, and then run it back, and it'll be fine. So that's how you want to kind of check this out. I'm going to bring it back to January 01/01/21 and run that report. Also note that if this was something, not 01/31/21, if we were doing our billing system here on a monthly basis, then we might try to set up our billing system so that the number of transactions is what we're going to bill on. So we can kind of count our number of transactions, and we can actually verify with the client instead of telling the clients, yeah, it took us 10 hours this month and took us 15 hours next month for whatever reason. It was harder that month than this month, right? They're going to say, well, why is the bill different? Well, it was more difficult this way or that way. It would be easier if you had some kind of system where you're saying, hey, if you're within this range of transactions, then we charge you this month. If you're in this range, we charge you that month. And then if your bill changes from month to month, you don't say, well, you don't have to go through the thing of saying, well, it was more difficult because you did this, that, and the other thing. You had these problems, and now it took us more time. You could basically just say, well, look at the transactions. There's more of them. Right? And so now you're in this billing range rather than the prior billing range. It's a little bit more concrete. So I would just consider doing that. Okay, so I'll print this out, and you can kind of check your numbers along with the work as we print this out if you want to take a look at it in more detail to double check any problems that you have going forward or any differences. Let's customize this report. I'll customize it up top. I'm just going to make the negative numbers bracketed and red. I'm not going to remove the pennies because I want this one to be exact in case there's any problems. Header and footer, I'll still remove the date prepared and the time prepared. Let's go ahead and process this report then. Scrolling back up top, we want to then download it to the PDF. Downloading it, PDF format, PDF style. And then I'm going to hit that square button and then drag this on into our January documentation. And then we're going to go back up again, and I'm going to then do it in Excel as well. And hit the drop down. There's Excel, which we're going to open up as well. So I'm going to enable the editing, and then we'll hit the triangle up top. I'm going to Control C, copy the full thing. Once again, we want to put that on our financial statement report. So I'm going to hit the plus button at the bottom, put my cursor in A1 and paste it, Control V, double click on the tab down below, and this is going to be the transaction by date report. And then this is not going to fit on one page most likely, so if I go to the second tab over here or the second view and back to the first one, it doesn't fit on one page, just as suspected. So this is not even close, so I'm going to change the orientation first by going to the format or the page layout up top, and then go to the orientation and say landscape. And then what I want to do is remove this column A because like nothing's in it, but I can't really do it that easily because of these merged cells. So typically I'll unmerge these cells because I don't like that merge thing in the first place, personally. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, Alignment, Unmerge, and then do it here. Home tab, Alignment, Unmerge, and then do it here. Home tab, Alignment, Unmerge, and then I'm going to cut these three cells by highlighting them and cutting them, cut them, and then paste them in B1. And then I'm going to remove column A, so we can get rid of column A. Don't need that. Delete. And then, like the memo, I can probably make the memo a little smaller here, maybe. I don't need that long of a memo. Notice it's got a wrapped text. I don't really want the text wrapped on the memo. That's not necessary. I'm going to take this whole thing, and I'm going to say, don't wrap the text. So I'm going to go back up top. Alignment, don't wrap the text. If it gets cut off there, I'm okay with that. And then we're going to make this account a little bit smaller here, possibly the split account a little bit smaller. Name, let's see if we can make that a little bit smaller. This posting column, maybe I don't even need that one, but I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to hide it just in case. I'm going to right click and hide it. So hide that column maybe. And we're really close now. So maybe if I just make this like a little smaller. There we go. There we go. And then if you want to recenter these ones, I can select them again, but I don't like doing that. You can go Home tab, Alignment, and you can merge them, but that's not the best way to do it. What I would do is right click on it and format. This is the way I'd do it, which is possibly not the best way, but my preferred way. I think it's the best. And then I'm going to go to horizontal, and I'm going to center across the cells. So then it doesn't have that merge kind of weirdness going on here. And then we'll do the same thing here. I can highlight these and then do my format painter, Home tab, clipboard, format paint. Same thing there. And then maybe I don't want to do it here because it'll mess up the size of the text. So maybe I'll do the same thing here. Right click, and then I'll format these things, and then horizontal, center across. So there we have that. Okay. Now let's export these reports to a PDF file. So I'm going to go to the File tab, save it. We're going to be using our cute PDF printer to do this. So any PDF printer would work. I happen to have a really cute one. It's called Cute PDF Printer. It's free. So, and then I'm going to say that we want the entire workbook to be printed. So there's the balance sheet. And there's the profit and loss. Notice it's kind of over to the side because if it's in Excel. You could do some formatting if you want to kind of center this more. This is one of the problems of doing this method. You get it all on one PDF file, but you do have differences in the formatting as it will show on Excel versus just if you printed the PDF file, which could be pros and cons because you can do a whole lot more formatting in Excel than in somewhere else, but we won't deal with it now. And then I'm going to go down here. Okay, so it looks good. I don't have to tape any pages together to see like columns that should be next to each other. So we're going to say print this thing to a PDF. And then it's going to ask me where I want to put it. And we'll be like, I'll tell you where we're going to put it. We're going to put it in, let's see. Hold on, I'll tell you in just a second. We want to put it in part 2, this part 2 in the January documents. I'm just going to call it Financial Reports January, save it. So there we have that. And then I'm going to close this out. I'm going to close this out, minimize this, and then we'll check out what we have that we can give to somebody now, right? So now I can open up this report everything's all in the one. That's not the one I wanted to open. That's the wrong report. Hold on, closing that back out. We want the financial report, this one. This one should have all three on one PDF file, so obviously we can attach that, and it would be, I think, more impressive than giving somebody 3 different attachments that you email directly from QuickBooks, for example. So you got the 3 reports all in one here. Again, the month-end reports, they might not even be looking at the month-end reports until they really need them at the year-end when they're doing their taxes. That's when someone looks at them, right? The taxpayer looks at them. But if they look at it and they're like, okay, I trust this bookkeeper's doing the job, they're keeping up on stuff and it looks nice, then they're that might be good for the interim kind of stuff. You're telling them, hey, I'm still around here. I'm doing things well. I'll be here at year end when you need me. And then this is going to be financial accounting. The other way you can give it to someone if you don't want to do that long report and you like the format of them just on a PDF file is to put them all into a one folder like so, and then like so, and then you can right click on that folder and then send it to a compressed file, and then you can attach this compressed file to, say, a email. Also note that these days you got the cloud accounting as well, so obviously putting it on like a Dropbox or on a OneDrive could be another, and then giving access to somebody on that. Although some people are not really good at that OneDrive thing, they might prefer the email. You really gotta just gauge if you're working with a client, you're trying to make the client happy, right? If they don't want to get on a OneDrive online and whatnot, or if that makes them uncomfortable that they'd rather get an email, it'd be easier. Then you want to attach something like possibly a zipped file, so it would be all in one file. They can open that up, or just give them the one PDF file so they can open it at one time.